All right, chapter 10, outlining your speech. Writing outlines for speeches is a very necessary idea. I'm making it an option for this class for the next speech, but it's very necessary that you come up with an outline. Create an outline that works for you. Make your speech seamless, which means that it makes it flow very smoothly. And then practice with your outline. Once you select which pattern to use, and we just went over that in the other chapter, you'll be able to play with all of the main points and subpoints and look at it as a roadmap for your presentation. And the functions of an outline, the functions are that it helps you organize and clarify your ideas, it guides you in deciding what material is important, and it forces you to assess the relationship between your subpoints and main points, of course relating to your thesis. And oftentimes I write on an outline, your subpoints don't back up your main point, or I'll write that your main points don't back up your thesis. And it's like a skeleton, it's a roadmap, so that you know thesis is at the top with that linear format, and then you have main points in the body, and you're supposed to have subpoints that back up the main points. Remember, it works as a roadmap for your presentation. So you can confirm clarity of both the purpose statement and the thesis. Once you get all those main points written, you'll be able to keep comparing, and make sure that your purpose statement and your thesis makes sense. Then you can add these goodies called transitions or signposts into the outline, which will help your audience and me, the professor, as I'm reading it. I'll know how you're organizing it into either the topical organization, the chronological, and I'll give you some examples of how those signposts and those transitions help me to know your organizational format. I'll give you some pointers on that. So the authors of this book recommend that you have a preliminary working outline, and that consists of what you're going to probably put on your note cards because, well, the extemporaneous outline, this is going to be your actual note cards. You're going to turn this into me at the beginning of each speech, and the preliminary working outline, I guess, is just a rough draft, but I'll go through what they say it is in this book. So the preliminary working outline contains a few words and identifies a few key points. That doesn't say much, does it? So the full sentence outline is something that I really think you're going to love doing, and it'll help you in life. I've had students after they graduate from my class say that they learn more about outlining than anything in my class, and it's helped them with all of their writing in the college level classes too by learning how to outline. The author calls the full sentence outline the second stage of writing your speech. So the full sentence outline, you should create this after you've gathered up all your research. We talked earlier about the difference between coordination and consistency. Your main points and your supporting evidence are going to be distinguishable on your outline. You're going to have transitions, citations, and labels on that outline, right where your main points and your subpoints are. And all of these lines of sentences are going to help you practice. So after you have that outline made, it's time to prepare what you're going to use while you're speaking, and I call the extemporaneous outline your note cards. Practice your timing with it. You'll just have to remember those words and what items you have to remember to share with your audience based on those words. You can write it in large block letters. You can do capital letters. You can do small and capital, whatever works with you. But don't pull full sentences. It won't all fit on your note cards, full sentences, so don't write it. And I don't want you to read from your note cards. Here's a test question. The main ideas of your speech are the subtopics of your speech that directly support your thesis. The main ideas of your speech are the subtopics of your speech that directly support your thesis. The main ideas of your speech are the subtopics of your speech that directly support your thesis. I said that a few minutes ago, but this is just repeating it. Main points are the key ideas or central themes of the speech. Main points are the key ideas or central themes of the speech. The main points are the key ideas or central themes of the speech. So the very first thing that you work on when you're writing a speech is your thesis and your purpose statement. The second is to start building the main points for your body. Like a skeleton that gives our body shape and purpose, these ideas serve as the framework of your outline so you can be successful. The ordering of points should flow logically so that the receivers can follow your presentation. You don't want them to wonder, this person must be schizophrenic because their logic is not falling in any type of an order. It's jumping around. Subordinate points or subpoints are the foundation on which larger ideas are constructed. Here's a test question. The subordinate ideas of your speech are those that function. The subordinate ideas of your speech are those that function as support or amplification for your main ideas or subtopics. The subordinate ideas of your speech are those that function as support or amplification for your main ideas or subtopics. So you heard me say subpoints. Subordinate ideas is another way of saying subpoints.
Those that function as what now?
I'll start over. The subordinate ideas of your speech are those that function as support or amplification for your main points or subtopics. So the main points are represented by the Roman numerals on your outline. So match up a full sentence main point with each of these Roman numerals. The subpoints fall under them and you indent and you use the letters A, B, C for the subpoints. That's basic outlining. And then if you have a sub-subpoint, right after these letters you use these numbers, but you keep indenting every time. If you need to go that deep into, like you're going to have a very organized speech, you want to know every single detail. That's the minutia right there. So the main points are there, then you go to that level, then you go to that level. Coordinate points. This simply means that all main points you discuss should be of equal weight or substance. I mentioned that you should have the same amount of time for each main point. You should break up for the body. Try to divide up the body into equal points. So if you talk too much about main point one and run out of time to talk about the other two, it's going to be kind of an off-balance type of speech. We're going to wonder why you didn't devote more time to subpoint or main point 2 and 3. You can have more than 3 main points. You might only have 2 main points. I'm just saying 3 main points just for the sake of picking a number. Don't have more than 4 because it'll be too long the speech. An example of coordinate points. Understanding the social customs of Mexico can improve Mexican-American relations is one main point. Understanding the business customs of Mexico can improve Mexican-American relations is the second one. You'll see this is good parallel style. So each of these main points, we should have balance in the body and cover enough of each one so they're balanced. If you speak about one point for 3 minutes, but only 2 minutes for the second, you don't have coordinate points. Try to equal them out. Parallelism is another good quality of outlining. A good outline must be devised in such a way that the concepts in it exhibit parallelism. Parallelism. They didn't actually write out main points and subpoints, but the way that they're trying to show you here, they're showing you how to use signposts here and say the first, the second, the first, the second, and then the main point, your first subpoint, your second subpoint. I'll show you on the example that I have what parallelism is. It's usually the first few words have to match. It says label all parts. I'm going to translate that into have symbols for every line that you have on your outline. There needs to be a symbol next to it. Don't just have a sentence floating. Develop an adequate body of material to share. Prepare an effective introduction and conclusion. Anticipate how you'll get from section to section and point to point. Highlight the sources in each of the main points. You need to have your sources there. The transitions and internal previews and internal summaries, they're so terrific that you can actually say a main point. If you want to use a signpost and say, the first concept of Judeo-Christian values is, the second concept of Judeo-Christian values is, so it lets you hold up a finger and say that number. It reaffirms the message so we see and we hear you. And the parallel style on each of those signposts let us know that you are going to cover 3 concepts, and we've now heard you talk about 2, and then you're going to go to 3. These are very helpful to give directional language to your audience. They're going to expect you to cover in a very organized way. So here's transitions, which are a little bit different, and all of these are on the test, so memorize all of these for the test at the end of the semester. Transitions act as bridges from idea to idea within your speech. Here's the examples of the different types of transitions. A chronological transition allows the listener to understand time relationships. Some words that we use to put a chronological transition into the outline, some of the words that we use are before, after, while, finally. Chronological transitions, before, after, while, finally. You may create your outline and then you'll say, where could I add some transitions, some signposts? So think about those words being added. And then when you say them out loud, it helps us even more. Contrasting transactions show how an idea differs from one point before it. That would be the word but. So you would say a sentence and you'd say but, and then all of a sudden on the other hand, and that's another, you could add the words on the other hand, or maybe on the one hand, or maybe in contrast. So those are the examples of contrasting transactions. But, on the one hand, on the other hand, in contrast. Those are ways of letting your audience know that one idea differs from the other. And that's used in between main points. Then there's causal transitions that show a cause and effect relationship. An example of a causal transition would be, because the maintenance on the bridge was ignored, blank. Because the maintenance on the bridge was ignored, and you had just talked about how bad the maintenance was on the bridge, so the transition you would throw in there is because the maintenance on the bridge was ignored, it failed. And you would talk about the failure of it. All of a sudden, your body shifted from all the bad maintenance to the outcome of the lack of maintenance. But you need your audience to know you're shifting, and the reason that we're able to follow you is because you're now telling us because the maintenance on the bridge was ignored, this happened. A complementary transition helps the speaker add one idea to the next. The words that you'd use for a complementary transition would be also, next, in addition to, likewise. Also, next, in addition to, and likewise. An internal preview helps hold your speech together, and it's generally longer than a simple transition. It prepares your audience for the information that will follow. An example, in a presentation on genetic engineering, a speaker told her audience, "We will next consider a technique that allows biologists to transfer a gene from one species to another. It is called recombinant DNA technology." So, the words "we will next consider a technique," it's giving you a preview of where you're going with the main points. So it's letting us know what the next main point's going to be. And it's usually in the middle of the body. Usually they're for longer speeches when you give an internal preview like that. You can also have an internal summary, which is also for a long speech. People will listen to you and they'll be like, what have they been talking about? Well, it really relieves us when you tell us an internal summary. So an example would be, this was a speech about violent video games. It should now be clear why violent video games can desensitize young people and make them meaner. We next need to turn our attention to what we can do about it. In my mind, that's a perfect transition. A transition goes back and then forward. They're calling it an internal summary, which is okay. But this type of language helps us because it reminds us what you've been covering and it tells you what you're going to cover next. Signposts. You've heard me talk about them a lot. The words first, second, and third, these appear as the first word in your main point or your subpoint. And also when you're going through the body of your speech with your audience, first I want to share blankety blank with you, and then you talk. Now that I've covered that first point, I'm going to shift down and tell you all about the second point. You can also have phrases like, remember this. You hear me say, this is on the test, or this is a test question. That's a signpost. Phrases that indicate an explanation is forthcoming. For example, to illustrate what I mean, some of you use a signpost with your fables, and you said, in other words, so you repeated what the lesson was at the end. Those are good signposts. In conclusion is a signpost. Rhetorical questions are, why is this important? And you don't really want your audience to answer you when you say something like that. So I would probably, at this point in my lesson, I could say, so why are signposts important? I really don't want you guys to answer me, but that indicates that I'm about to tell you why they're important. Get ready to affirm. Here we go again. I have a good idea of both my purpose for speaking and my topic to help me brainstorm and organize my ideas. I drew a concept map and converted my thoughts into a written working outline. I developed my working outline into a full sentence outline and added subordinate points to support the main ideas. I've included at least 2 main ideas that supported with at least 2 subordinate points. I've added transitions so my speech flows seamlessly. I added an intro and a conclusion that preview and review my speech's main ideas. And I have revised my outline into speaker's notes that I use to practice my speech out loud. I swear, I affirm. In conclusion, I just went through a lesson on how to create an outline that works for you, how to make it seamless, and how to practice using your outline